Blessed day once again to you. So as we move on and continue with our discussion on normative ethical theory, let us proceed to the next or the second predominant normative ethical theory that I'd like to uh, impart to you as a way of trying to understand further on how we are going to create our own ethical principles in life. Okay, so the next or the second one is on lesson 10, concept of the natural law. Okay, so our discussion on natural law is outlined based on this perspective. We understand the meaning of law, then the kinds of law, and the ethics of the natural law. Our discussion will be guided by the philosophical teachings of this Italian philosopher, Tommaso de Aquino, or in English is known as Thomas Aquinas, or Saint Thomas of Aquino. Aquino is a place in Italy. And our discussion on these topics on law is taken from this momentous work of Saint Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologiae, specifically on Treatise on Law, questions 90 to 108. So just a glimpse of his important views on the topic that we are considering for the moment. Okay, so let's begin with the definition of what is law. Okay, so for St. Thomas Aquinas, law is nothing else than an ordinance of reason for the common good made by him who has the care of the community, and it is promulgated. So before we look into these essential properties of law, some few words on the meaning itself. So it is an ordinance of reason. Okay, so it is something, a product of the use of reason, not a product of what the lawmaker feels. So meaning to say it is being thought of. Okay, then it is for the common good. The law must be not for a few, but for everyone. Okay, so it's for the betterment of the greater part of the community. Okay, so that is why when you will become someday, if you will become a lawmaker, always think of the common good when you are going to make a law, and then do not base your law on what you feel for the moment, but you think of it. It is made by him who has the care of the community. Okay, so by a person who is entrusted, in whom a community is entrusted to him. So to have a simple understanding, we mentioned the example of lawmakers in our society today. So our lawmakers are being elected. They are not being appointed, but they are being elected. Okay, through an election. Okay, so we have the barangay councilors. They are lawmakers. We have the town and the city councilors. They are lawmakers. We have the congressmen, the district representatives, and we have the senators. So they are those in whom a community is entrusted to them. Okay, so a law must be made by someone who has a community entrusted to him. Okay, now in the case of the family, you have your parents. They have certain laws that you need to follow. Your family is a sort of a community. However, what makes it different is that the law must be promulgated. Okay, that is to say, it must be made known to everyone under the jurisdiction of the law. So this is how he understand or he defined law. That is why when we look into the properties, so must be directed for the common good, not only applicable for a small group of people. The law is to direct human behavior according to the order of rightness. So laws are there, in order to guide us on how to act properly. Okay, so if we are going to apply this perspective, we can apply this perspective, for example, in our own class. What's the purpose why there was a course orientation? We may consider those things that I've mentioned as certain laws. So you are the community, you are part of the community that is entrusted to me. Okay, so you have different sections. So we call that also a community. And that is why through that course orientation video, those things that I've mentioned as what we call laws are being promulgated to you. And what's the main purpose? To direct our behavior according to the order of rightness. And that is why in the course orientation, you have noticed there are things that I've mentioned that this is what you need to do, this is what you will not do at all. Because what's going to happen when there is no law? Then what will happen to the order of rightness? Okay, so this is one of the important property of a law. And it urged people to do what is jurisdically prescribed. Okay, so again, this is a big question mark, the third property. Okay, the law urges, but then again, question is the law being followed? Okay, so for those of you who are not living in Cebu City, I do not know if this law is also present in your own place. There is what you call the law on bicycle lane. Okay, so the streets, I guess this is a national law. So as to the applicability of it, it depends in the local government. So it's for the common good, of course, that bikes must occupy a certain lane in order not to put themselves in danger. However, what happens? Okay, it says that this is the bike lane. Here in Cebu City, it's so observable. The bike lanes are made as parking areas. And there are those who are bikers who do not follow the bike lanes because of that situation. Then again, does the law possess some teeth in it? Okay, so but then again, according to Aquinas, it urges us to do what is prescribed by it. So that is how he understands what a law is all about. So from here, we move on to the second point, which is the different kinds of law according to St. Thomas Aquinas. So we begin with what he calls eternal law. Okay, so familiarize yourselves with this. So it is the divine and rational model according to which God created the world, the divine plan of the universe. Okay, so we are familiar with the universe. So we may ask things such as the orbits of the different planets. Say, for example, our solar system. Why is it in that regard? So why are all the planets not rotating around the sun together? And so on and so forth. All right. So by eternal law, we mean to say that divine and rational model. So if you are an architect or if you are a civil engineer, you have a plan for a particular building. The eternal law is somewhat like a blueprint, how things should be, according to the divine plan. And this is made by, according to Aquinas, no, a Catholic doctor of the church and a saint. According to him, it is God, no, who is responsible for the eternal law. So he said, the world is ruled by divine providence or divine reason. That is, the whole community of the universe is governed by a divine reason. So there is a ruler, no? And he calls it divine reason, no? Or divine providence, or simply called as God. Okay? So he said, since time does not exist for the divine intellect or the divine reason or the divine providence, then his understanding is eternal. Simply, it is not temporal, and thus it is eternal. Now, since he is responsible for the existence of this divine plan, so that is why he calls it, no, eternal law. Okay? So when we say eternal, no beginning and no end. That is part of, if you are studying theodicy, that's part of the basic nature of God being eternal. Okay, so it's all there. It exists there. Okay, as to when did it start to exist, that's a big question, because according to Aquinas, being called eternal, it has no beginning, it has no end. But it is the universal or the divine plan, no, in which things came to be. No? So as to the question, no, kaya na mo question nga, sir, is there a God? No? Let us not discuss it here, because the proper venue, no, for the discussion on the existence of God is not in ethics, but of course in theodicy. As you can recall, no, that introduction video on the different branches of philosophy. But here, according to Aquinas, it is called eternal because time does not exist, no, in the so-called ruler of the universe. No? God is there, no beginning and no end. Okay, so Aquinas argued, however, no, this is now very crucial, nobody except God and the blessed can know the eternal law in itself. Okay, it would be like this. Who really knows you? I bet your parents, no, do not know you totally by yourself. Who knows you totally? Of course, other than or setting aside God, no, who is the all-knowing being, there is no other person who knows you personally except you. No? So according to Aquinas, this eternal law being authored by God, no, which is the divine plan of the universe, no, can only be known by himself and together with the blessed. Okay? So the eternal law cannot be known in itself. Okay? And who are these blessed? These are the beings who are with God. No? The rational beings. No? We call that in the Catholic Church the saints, no? Who are living with God. No? And they are the ones who can only know the eternal law per se, or in itself, or by itself. However, no, since the human being is that God, is that a blessed, no, then can we understand it? He said, every rational creature knows the eternal law in its reflection, greater or less. For every knowledge of truth is a kind of reflection and participation of the eternal law. While he said that we human beings, whom he calls rational creatures, so diindikan ang concept that man is rational. I mentioned this in Virtue Ethics. It came from Aristotle. So Aquinas, historically speaking, was greatly also influenced by the teachings, philosophical teachings of Aristotle. Okay, so man is a rational creature. Okay, so we are called rational because of the possession of our reason. All right? So, while he argued that only God and the blessed can know the eternal law in itself, man has the capability of knowing it, not by itself, but knowing the eternal law in its reflection. So, where will the eternal law reflect itself so that it will be knowable by man? Okay? Here, it reflects itself on the truth that man is capable of knowing. Thus, using man's reason in the acquisition of knowledge of the truth, then this acknowledgement that he knows the truth on certain things around him, no, is actually a way of knowing the eternal law. Okay, I'll give you an example. Okay, let's talk about the leaves. No? Leaves. No? The leaves of the trees or plants. Okay, with the use of man's reason, man would understand, no, that leaves, most leaves, no, are colored green. No? And then later on, in later days, it withers. Okay? Sa Bisaya pa, ang mga dahon malaya. Kasabot siya na, and that is a truth among some other truths other than malaya ang leaves. No? So using his reason, dili man siya moingon nga, kaning leaves, ba nga nagyugha ning malaya, no? No? With common sense, no, makaingon siya nga with the use of his reason, mao gyud na nature sa leaves nga ang leaves malaya, no? So in that perspective, no, that reality itself, the truth itself, enables the human being to see the reflection of the eternal law, no? So kanang pagkalaya sa leaves, for example, kanang pagkataya sa puthaw, for example, is part of the divine plan. No? It's part of the natural tendency of things. That these things will go to a particular end. So using man's reason and understanding this truth, no, enables him to know, no, there is what Aquinas calls the presence of the eternal law. Okay? And he said, by participation in cognition of the truth, no? When he knows, he participates. No? Yeah. Siya mismo, for example, manam siya katiguan. No? Walking towards his end, which is death. And in so doing, he participates. By participation in cognition of truth, in his understanding of the truth, man learns something about eternal law. For this law is the unchangeable truth. Okay? We cannot deny the fact, for example, this another truth that I'd like to mention, na kita mismo, you and me, okay, is actually walking towards our own death. Okay? And this truth is unchangeable. You have probably seen a lot of movies, no, that depict about eternity. No? Nga man will never die, immortality. Okay? But then again, it's only, no, product of imagination. But it's not true at all. So these truths, no, that man understand in his physical life are actually but reflections of the existence of the eternal law. So according to the order of eternal law, all creatures participate in eternal law, meaning to say, no, all creatures, no, would follow this divine plan. No? Mao nang rason nga ang dahon padong sa kalaya. No, ang puthaw mataya. Di mo kamoingon nga ang puthaw mao'y malaya, no? Ang tao padong ginas kamatayon. Okay? Each creature for him has some imprint of divine reason. So, Our reason that makes us rational is actually also a reflection because it imprint of the divine reason. And this imprint directs scriptures to their proper operations and ends. Okay? So it is reason that guides these things. So if the eternal law, therefore, is the divine plan of the universe that makes these things, all things operate on its own, then if we have this reason, which is an imprint of the divine reason, then as rational creatures, we may use them in order to guide our own selves to have proper operations. No? So, reason plays an important part, therefore, okay, in trying to understand and maintain, no, the order of one's existence. Because, can you think of it? Without the eternal law, then probably the universe would be in chaos. Okay? With the existence of all these truths, for example, the truth about the gravity, no? Wala na siya gravity. What's gonna happen to us living here in this world? Okay? So these things, no? The so-called eternal law is that which provides order. And since we have some imprints of the divine reason as rational creatures, then this reason must also direct ourselves, no, to our proper operations and our proper ends. Okay? So if part of the truth of the human being is that we will die sooner or later, then why shall we, no, go against that truth? Okay? Where in fact, there's only one immortal being, no, that is part of us. And this is what philosophers will argue as the human soul. So our body will die. No? When we die, it's not the total human being that will die, okay? But only our physical existence. Our spiritual existence, which philosophers call the soul, continues to live. And that is that part of man which is considered as immortal. And these are some truths, no, that could be understood with the use of our reason. So as we understand the truth, we participate in the eternal law, and we know the so-called eternal law only in its reflection, not in itself. Okay? So if you wish to further understand on the eternal law in its deepest, no, discussion, there would be some other venues for this one. Okay? We move on. Second is called divine law. Eternal law, then divine law. The divine law is a law derived from God and guides man to perform acts in order to reach his or her end, which is eternal happiness. So remember the discussion on the concept of morality. No? There is an ultimate end, no, for every human being, for every human act. The divine law is also called the divine revelation expressed in the Holy Scriptures, which assists man in understanding the requirements of law and morality. So the divine law, no, is simply called the Bible, no, the Holy Scriptures. Okay? It is something that assists every human being in understanding the requirements of law and the concept of morality. So why it is called divine? Because it is coming from a divine being. The divine reason, the divine providence, the divine intellect, who is God himself. Okay? So we ask, who made the Bible, for example? Okay? So the Bible is a physical object. It is written by human beings. Okay? So for example, if you're familiar with your Bible, no? So you have the concept of letters of St. Paul to the Romans, to the Thessalonians, to the Galatians. So St. Paul is a human being. He wrote that and it's part of the Bible. Now, how do we know that it is something nga tinuod? Ang mga tao may gasuwat gihapon ani. We know that human beings are imperfect. Now, as Aquinas argued, no, these people, no, had undergone the so-called divine revelation. And this happens through, no, the so-called influence, no, or guidance of God Himself, no, using the human being as His instrument in order to put into writing, no, the laws that would guide the human beings here in this world. Okay, so the divine law is made by man, but divinely inspired, no, by God Himself. So that's why we call the Bible or the Holy Scriptures as something divine. All right. Now, Aquinas said that the divine law is necessary for four reasons. Okay, first, man is ordained to a supernatural end which surpasses his natural reason. Man is by nature going towards an end, and that end is what he calls eternal happiness. So necessary ang divine law. So it is that which assists us in order for us to attain the so-called supernatural end, which is eternal happiness. Okay? Because of the uncertainty of human judgments, different and contradictory laws result. Okay, so what happens? If human laws, which we're going to discuss in a while, no, would contradict with each other, then what's the purpose of the divine law? Huh? So in boxing, there is a referee. So it is that which meddles between conflicts of human laws. So that is why in the court of law, for example, I guess you're familiar with this, before a witness is allowed to testify on a particular case, he is made to swear, putting his right hand on where? Correct, on the Bible. Because the Bible becomes the basis if there are some conflicting, no, laws. Another thing, the divine law is also important because human law could not sufficiently direct interior acts. So remember, we have elicited acts. No? And yeah, the divine law is that which assists us to understand the requirements of law and morality. No? The human laws that we have experienced are laws that govern our physical activities, okay, to direct us to the order of rightness. But there are certain acts that we are capable of doing as rational creatures, and those are interior acts. Say, for example, entertaining impure thoughts. Entertaining impure thoughts. Okay? Retaining it. Okay? So we ask, is it something immoral? No? Then the Bible will tell us about these things. No? What is not right? No? What is not, or what is good? What is wrong? No? Because the human law can only direct, no, exterior acts of human beings. Second, human law cannot punish or forbid all evil deeds. True enough. No? So, dili man siya perfect ang mga human laws because they are made by imperfect human beings. That's why we need, no, divine law. Okay? So naa diha sa divine law, no, ang mga punishment, no? What are the things that are being forbidden, which are not found, no, actually in human laws. So this is the importance of the divine law according to Aquinas. Next kind, before going, he argued, the divine law is given directly by God. Therefore, it is not the result of human judgment, but the gift of divine grace. So as I've mentioned to you, through divine revelation. At the same time, divine law does not contradict human reason, but completes it by presenting additional rules for life and behavior. While it is true that we have a lot of rules, no, physical rules being followed here in our existence, then we also have the divine law as additional rules as we go on with our own existence. Okay? So, importante sa siya. Next, we have the natural law, which is the topic on hand. So, we understand it first before going to the ethics of the natural law. It is a process whereby man, as a rational being, participates in eternal law. So how do we participate in eternal law? As I mentioned, through the knowledge, through the cognition of the truth. Okay? So Aquinas said that the natural law is something appointed by reason. Nothing else than the rational creature's participation of the eternal law. Okay? So simply, if we understand the truths, no, in our midst, we are participating in the natural law. And as we understand, as we participate, natural law will exist. So it is not law of nature, ha? Lahat ng natural law o law of nature. Okay? So here we clearly understand, no, that it is only through our understanding or cognition or knowledge of the truth, no, in which the eternal law reflects itself, no, can we say that the natural law will exist. All right? He said the natural law is called law only because of man's participation. Therefore, if we do not acknowledge the truths, no, the self-evident truths within our midst, then the natural law will never exist at all. Okay? He continued, while irrational beings are subject to the eternal law, they cannot participate in rational manner. What does this statement imply? Okay? So as I've said, we are rational creatures because we possess reason. Now, there are other creatures other than man existing and living in this world. And Aquinas called them irrational beings, such as the plants and the animals. Okay? They are still subject. No? They are still under the jurisdiction of the eternal law because they are part of the divine plan of the universe. Okay? Though they are subject to the eternal law, they cannot participate in a rational manner. Okay? Their participation is called natural participation. Di na sila magamit og reason. That by themselves, they have a natural tendency. As I've mentioned a while ago, no? Ang dahon, padong sa kalaya. No? Ang puthaw, padong sa kataya. Ang tao, padong gina sa kamatayon also. Okay? And these things, there are a lot of things, no? Irrational things and beings have their own natural tendency. Okay? So kung makakita ka og puthaw or steel nga nalaya, no? So that is not, no? There is something wrong. That is not what is supposed to be in the eternal law, in the divine plan. Okay? So, the way inigtanaw nimo nga ang dahon na laya di ay, that kani nga dahon actually participated naturally in the eternal law. Okay? But since we're talking of the natural law, as man's participation of the eternal law, no, then our participation is called rational participation. So, ang uban, natural participation. Okay? He further argued that natural law in men, because of the participation of the divine reason, reveals itself by the inclination to seek for good and shun evil. But first of all, it directs human actions to the end. Okay? So the natural law now reveals itself by our inclination to seek for good and shun evil. So it's part, as rational creatures, it's part of our nature to seek for good. Remember what Aristotle had said? No? Part of our natural tendency is to seek for the good in everything that we do. Okay? And then Aquinas comes in. No? The inclination to seek for good and shun evil is a way of participating with the eternal law. No? The first principle of practical reason is one founded on the nation of good. That is, good is that which all things seek after. Okay? Going towards that tendency going towards that end. So he said that the first precept of the law, of the natural law, is that good is to be done and pursued, and evil is to be avoided. So at this point, if you wish to ask me what is the formulation of the natural law, from this perspective, we can summarize it in 4 words. Do good, avoid evil. That's part of our nature. When we really do good and we avoid evil, then we participate in the natural law. Okay? Because this is one way of acknowledging the truth, no? About part of our nature, that it is our tendency to always seek for good and to shun evil. Okay? So natural law simply implies 3 essential points. Please take note on this. It is that which is being appointed by reason. Why is it appointed by reason? Because reason is that which is being used by man in the cognition of the truth. Okay? Man does not use his feelings to understand the truth, but use his reason. And as he understands the truth, he participates in the eternal law. And as he participates in the eternal law, the natural law will exist. Because the natural law is that which is the participation of the eternal law. Okay? Second point of the natural law, it is an inclination towards the good. That is to say, to do good and to avoid evil. Okay? So, mao ni ato ang gihimo sa ato ang kinabuhi, then we are participating with the eternal law, then the natural law exists. Above all, as we have already said, the natural law is man's participation of the eternal law. Okay? So with that, we move on. We have the 4th kind, the human law. These are the laws being promulgated by those, I have said, we elect to position. So it emerges when a public person entrusted with the care of the community exercise human reason in order to interpret the eternal law and create laws. So we call them human laws because it's the human being who are making them. It is the application of natural law to particular societies by way of conclusions and determinations. So this will be, the eternal law must be the guide, according to Aquinas, for these lawmakers or legislators in creating laws. Okay? So take note, a private person cannot make laws because he or she does not have coercive power, or what he calls the power to inflict penalties. Okay? So as we have said, anong kinahanglan siya nga public siya nga figure, a public person, because he is being elected into office. All right? So with this, being elected comes this coercive power in him or her. That's why when he creates the law, okay, part of the law will be the penalties. So they have this power to do so. Okay? And this power comes from the electorate, of course. Okay? So a human law creates a moral obligation. So we are morally obliged to follow the human law, the laws created by these people. Only if, 1, it has been promulgated to men by the lawmaker. So itong promulgated, it is being made known. Second, if it is a just law. So we are morally obliged it when we know it and it is something just. Okay? So what is just? Consistent with the divine reason. That is to say, the law that this lawmaker creates promotes the common good. It does not exceed the lawmaker's authority. That is why we have the perspective that no one is above the law. And it does not impose a disproportionate burden on individuals. I remember one incident here in Mandaue City, that the not wearing of shoes while driving a motorcycle has a penalty of 5,000 or 10,000 pesos. So there was a chaos then because that was disproportionate. No? So that's why the law was being repealed or changed. Okay? So when you see these things, these characteristics of a just law, no? Kani silang tulo, then you are morally obliged to obey that particular law. Okay? So much so with the human law. Let's proceed with the last point in our discussion on the natural law, lesson 10. The ethics of the natural law. So Aquinas started to argue that man possesses reason. I mentioned this in the previous lesson, speculative and the practical reason, otherwise known as the intellect and the will. So man's intellect, according to him, always is inclined towards the truth. So this speculative reason is inclined towards knowing the truth. And this practical reason is inclined towards the good. So it's part of our nature, therefore, having reason, both intellect and will, to be always inclined towards knowing the truth and towards doing the good, willing the good. So the concept of the good is the most fundamental concept of the practical sphere, no? The practical or the will, which is related to the fundamental precept of the natural law. So first, no, precept of the law, good is to be done and pursued, and evil is to be avoided. So it is related because our will is always inclined man towards the good. So with this precept, no, of the natural law, Aquinas continued in saying, practical reason understands the precepts of the natural law as human good, okay, and is able to decide how to fulfill them without recourse to evil action. So therefore, it is but the nature of man having this practical reason, his will, to always choose, no, what is right. Okay? Mona, Saint Augustine, on his part, he argued that man has no right, no, to do what is evil, to recourse to evil actions, because his nature is good in the first place, because he is created by an absolute good creator who is God. No? Here in Aquinas, he said that since our will is inclined towards the good, then if the law, the natural law says, do good, avoid evil, then we have to always recourse of doing good. No? Pero what happens to man? Okay? So, mo na gitawag og free will. But is this freedom absolute? No, it's not. Strictly speaking. Okay? So this way, natural law is understood as practical reasons, innate inclination. So it's part, no? The natural law is part in us, which enables reason to make moral decisions. So the right use of our will, therefore, which is always inclined towards the good, no, would lead us to decide what is morally right to be done. Okay? And our speculative reason enables us to know the truth. For example, the truth about morality. Okay? If we know it is right, then following the natural law, we do it. If it's evil, we avoid it. No? Absolutely speaking. So understanding the inclinations of human nature is good. As good, reason directs them towards corresponding actions. So we understand what is good, then we do what is good. We understand what is evil, then we avoid what is evil. That is in congruence with, no, the precept of the natural law with the proper functioning of our higher faculty, which is reason. This is what Aristotle called in the previous discussion as the well-functioning human being. So therefore, the order of natural inclinations, so ito ang natural inclinations as rational creatures, corresponds with the order of the directives of the natural law. That is, man has innate orientations on how to live and behave in this world. No? So innate na nato. It's part of our nature. But then, why does man choose or recourse to evil actions? So it's now the decision of the human being. The improper use, according to St. Augustine, the improper use of his free will. Okay? He then classified man's natural inclinations as a natural and rational being. So natural creature ta and rational creature. So first inclination according to Aquinas, to preserve its own being, which is common to all. Dili lang sa tao, no? Preservation of its own being. So he argued, whatever is a means of preserving human life and of warding off its obstacles belongs to the natural law. Thus, man is obliged to preserve his own existence. So this reasoning of Aquinas, preservation of one's own being, is actually one of the basic basis why kanibitang artificial birth control is morally wrong in this perspective, because it hinders the preservation of human life. Okay, can you just imagine Japan, or I guess Japan or China, with their one-child policy before? No? So I guess most of you are aware of this, no? Nga ang daghang members of population in these countries, no, are the old ones already. Gamay na lang ang nagsunod nga generation, no? So those that hinder the preservation of human life is against the natural law, because the natural inclination of the human being as a natural and rational creature is to preserve his own existence. Okay. Second, directed towards the preservation of the species. Thus, in virtue of this inclination, those things are said to belong to the natural law again. Okay, which nature has taught to all animals, including the human being, because man is an animal also. No? So, sexual intercourse, education of offspring, no, are a way of preservation of the species. Okay? But then again, what happens to the sexual act? No? So naturally, the sexual act leads towards the preservation of the species. No? Procreation, they say. But what happens now? I guess you're aware, no, that the sexual act becomes a means, no, in order to achieve another end. It is not considered as end in itself. Okay? So pleasure is being the primary goal na, no, of the sexual act, no longer the preservation of species. But then it's part of our natural inclination, and it is part of the natural law. The third level belong those which are according to reason. So kaning inclination para ni tao. Katong first two inclinations are true to all the substances, all the species. So Aquinas indicates two of them. Okay? To know the truth about God and to live in society. Okay? So this is part of the inclination of the rational creature who is the human being. This level involves faith, truth, and social relations. So that is why, according to Aristotle, we live in a community. Only beasts live alone. And this is also what Aquinas argues. Okay? That we live in a society. So this classification shows that, first of all, a human person strives for self-preservation. Secondly, to live in the community. Okay? Life in a family presupposes an understanding of the instinct of self-preservation, not only for one's own sake, but also for others. This way, the notion of the common good comes into being, which is the third level, understood as for the good of the society. Not only to live in the society, but to live harmoniously together with others, no, for the good of the society. Kohlberg calls this, no, to have a functioning society. So this is brought about by both the speculative and the practical reason in man. Okay, proceed. For Aquinas, therefore, the compatibility of action with the demands of the natural law, that is with the common good, is an important criterion for defining its righteousness. Thus, for Aquinas, only those actions which meet this criterion does Aquinas call moral, and by this aspect he said that the natural law is called the moral law. So what is a right action for Aquinas? That which is compatible with the natural law. And what is the demand of the natural law? What does the natural law prescribe? To do good and to avoid evil. Okay? So if the action known by man is good and he does it, then Aquinas calls it moral action. If man knows that the action is evil and still performs it, then the moral action or the action is called an immoral act. Okay? So what does the natural law tells us? Okay? To do good and to avoid evil. All right? So, this ends the discussion on the natural law. So my takeaway is simply, as much as we could, if we know it is good, we do it. If we know what is evil, we avoid it as much as possible. Okay? So in this manner then, kung we connect with virtue ethics, in this manner then, we would be able to live the good life, and hopefully this good life will lead us to what Aquinas calls our supernatural end, which is eternal happiness. So I say, good luck in your life. Thank you very much.